In this video, we're going to talk about how to interpret the meaning of linear functions. So remember we talked about the rate of change. The rate of change of a linear function is the value of its slope. The rate of change of y with respect to x can be found by calculating the slope using this equation, m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, where x1, y1, and x2, y2 represent points that are on the line. So we can describe a line using its intercepts. The x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. At this point, the y value is 0, so the x-intercept has the form x0, where x is a number. The y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. At this point, the x value is 0, so the y-intercept has the form 0y, where y is a number. So when we talk about intercepts and slopes and we're working with word problems, these values have meaning given the context of the problem. So let's think about what it's talking about. The graph shows the distance of a hiker from her camp in miles, h hours after leaving her campsite. What does the y-intercept represent? So you can see from this graph it has a y-intercept at 0, 2. So that means we have the 0, 2 value as our y-intercept, where x equals 0 when y equals 2. Well, in this problem, we're not talking about x and y, we're talking about h and d of h. So we have h and d of h. And what these two variables mean are outlined in our problem. H is the number of hours, d of h is the distance, which is described in miles. So what this 0, 2 is telling us is that h equals 0 hours and d of h equals 2 miles. So what this is saying is that 0 hours, which is where our problem starts, the hiker is 2 miles from camp. So now let's think about the meaning of the slope. The slope, remember, is the rise over the run. So let's draw a path between these 2 points. So I'm going to go right 1, 2, which is plus 2, and I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 6. So my rise over run is plus 6 over plus 2, which equals 3. So the meaning of the slope, well, slope, remember, is y over x, or in the context of this problem, it's going to be d of h over h. D of h is the distance, which is given to us in miles, and then h is the number of hours. So distance in miles over hours is basically her speed. So the slope of 3 tells us that 3 miles per hour is her hiking speed. So now let's look at this problem. The graph shows the height of a plant in centimeters m months after Gavin purchased it. Interpret the x-intercept. The x-intercept is going to be here at -7, 0. That means that x equals -7 when y equals 0. So the x value is -7 means that we have m, which is -7, and we have h of m, which is 0. So let's think about what these variables mean. M is the number of months. H of m is the height, which is given to us in centimeters. So -7, 0 means that m equals -7 months when the height, h of m, equals 0 centimeters. So what does a negative time value mean? A negative time value means that we're talking about time before our starting point. So before he purchased the plant was 7 months ago. Okay, so 7 months ago, the plant was 0 centimeters tall. Okay, or you could say that 7 months before purchase. Okay, since purchase is kind of like our starting point in this problem. Now let's interpret the y-intercept. The y-intercept is at 0, 28. So we have x equals 0 when y equals 28. So we don't have x and y in this problem. We have m and h of m. So this is telling us that when m equals 0 months, h of m equals 28 centimeters. So that means when he purchases the plant, okay, so when plant purchased, it was 28 centimeters tall. So now let's calculate the slope of this line. We're given 2 points on the line, so we can use our formula to calculate the slope. So remember, our formula is m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So to keep everything straight, let's label our points x1, y1, and x2, y2. So let's plug in. y2 is 28 minus y1, which is 0. That's over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is negative 7. So 28 minus 0 is 28. 0 minus negative 7 will be 0 plus 7, which is 7. So that equals a slope of 4. Now let's think about the meaning of the slope. Slope is y over x, which is h of m over m. So that is basically saying the height in centimeters over the number of months. So if you think about this, this is basically telling us the rate at which the plant is growing. So it's telling us the plant grows 4 centimeters per month. So we can say that this is like the plant growth rate. So this graph shows the total amount of money in Tara's lunch account in dollars W weeks after she started buying her lunch. Interpret the x-intercept. So if we look along the x-axis, we have that point 8, 0, which is x equals 8, y equals 0. Or in the context of this problem, it's going to be w and t of w. So w, we know from our problem, represents the number of weeks. T of w tells us the amount of money in her account. So this value of 8, 0 tells us that w equals 8 weeks and t of w equals 0. So what this means is that at 8 weeks, she has no money in her account. Now let's interpret the y-intercept. The y-intercept occurs here at 0, 20. So that means that x equals 0, y equals 20, or in other words, w and t of w. So what this is saying is that w equals 0 weeks, t of w equals $20. So that means at 0 weeks, or in other words, at starting, she has $20 in her account. And that is how you interpret the y-intercept. So now let's calculate the slope. So to calculate the slope, we have the 2 points that we were talking about, 8, 0 and 0, 20. So let's use our formula, m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And let's label our points. So this is going to be x1, y1, and this will be x2, y2. So when we plug in, we have y2, which is 20, minus y1, which is 0. That's divided by x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is 8. So we have 20 minus 0, which is 20, divided by 0 minus 8, which is negative 8. So 20 divided by negative 8 is going to tell us negative 2.5. So negative 2.5 is our value of slope. Now let's interpret the slope. So slope, remember, is y over x. So in this case, it's going to be t of w over w. So that is telling us the amount of money for the number of weeks. Well, you can see here that the amount of money per weeks is negative, right? So she's losing $2.50 per week. Or you can maybe say, maybe a better way to say would say to be that she's spending $2.50 per week on lunch. Okay, and that is what the meaning is of the slope of this graph. So when studying linear functions, the values of the x-intercept, y-intercept, and slope can tell you important information about the behavior of the function.